Casual Magic has been brought to you by CoolStuffInc, where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code CASUALMAGIC to get 10% off your sale. And by Archidekt, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of magic together. My name is Shivam, and Casual Magic is brought to you by CoolStuffInc, where you can get use my code CASUAL for 5% off your order. Coalesce Apparel, where you can use the code Casual Magic to get 10% off your order, and get my brand new T-shirt, which totally just came out. It's super sweet and awesome. And Archidekt, they don't sell anything, and I don't have a code, but they just like me, and I put all my decks there, so it's great. You know, sponsors are a thing that we have to do in order to stay alive in the content game. But today, I have a very, very special episode. Joining me today is BlackGirlMage Lexi, a DM and EDH enthusiast online. I've been watching her, I guess, for the past month or three. She's come into my radar, and I'm like, this lady is cool. I would like to talk to her because I am also in D&D and Magic, and I'm a big fan. So, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Seriously.
This is sweet. Because, I'll be honest with you, one of the things that my whole life, as a token brown man in so many of the things that we've been into, I am still, despite being 41 years old or whatever, I'm still like, oh my God, there's somebody who's not white that plays the thing I do.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that's ever going to go away just because I'm from that generation where I was the only white guy in Massachusetts. I mean, the only brown guy in Massachusetts playing Dragonlance games or whatever. But the 80s were not the 2020s. So nowadays we have infinite, awesome resources for people of color to play the games that we thought we weren't allowed to play as kids. So seeing folks like you out there, DMing, being living this makes me so happy. Legit makes me so happy. It's everything that sucked for me doesn't suck for you guys, and that makes me feel like it was worth it, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that one of my favorite things is that, so where I live, a lot of the majority of the people I play with are white, but what I love about it is that everyone knows it, so I can make commentary about it, and everyone's expecting.
Yeah,
straight up expecting me to be you're gonna pick on it's a great feeling to just be able to poke at it, and people know. They're like, I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're lucky to live in an era where that sort of thing, people get it and people understand. And because I remember the first time I went to Gen Con, which is a big gaming convention. When I went, it was in Milwaukee, and now it's in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. But I went in 1999. And the first time I went, and I swear to God, people were my friends were like, dude, we can see you literally a mile and a half away because you're the only brown guy for 900 miles or whatever. And I'm like,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was the cookie in a sea of milk.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, how did you get into I guess tabletop gaming?
Yeah, so what's funny is that would you include Magic in tabletop gaming?
I think Magic and D&D are both absolutely tabletop games.
Yes. So I got into Magic first, technically.
Oh, really? Okay, that's even better.
Yeah, so one of my there was a friend that I knew through my sister in college, and she basically brought me in, taught me Magic in one night, and then signed me up for a pre-release. In 2 weeks from being taught Magic. And that was during
a pre-release is the best way to go, though. If you're gonna go to the deep end, you might as well just.
Yeah, it was wild.
So yeah, so you went to a pre-release. What did you do there? What set was this?
It was Throne of Eldraine.
Wow, so you're hella new.
Yes, and the thing is, as I went to the Throne of Eldraine pre-release, I was so excited. She gave me a bunch of her cards, so I have a bunch of cool fairy tale themed cards. but then I just like did not play again. Like ever, like until I got back into Magic when Ikoria dropped, which is so funny because you tweeted today like it was 2 years ago,
It
and I
was
was like,
2 years ago.
whoa, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. But I had bought the Cathro Precon, and that's how I first got into like right back into playing Magic.
By buying an EDH Precon?
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay. So wait, so you learned how to play, you went to like one pre-release, and then you bailed?
Bailed.
Like, what did you think about Throne of Eldraine? Or
I
what was
thought
the
it was
experience like?
so I thought it was so cool. I really vibed more with the story aspect of things. I
Sure,
really
sure.
liked like I had played I hadn't played any deck building games before. I didn't realize that was a genre of game that existed,
Mm,
but I think I was very much drawn to thematic uh, games. I was drawn to, especially at that point in time, anything fairy tale
mm.
because I had just started hearing about D and just
You're blowing my mind, dude. How
it
did you only
was.
just hear about D&D in 2019 or
I
whatever?
know my parents were big, like the 80s. They're the 80s, 90s, like the Satanic Panic. They were
Ah,
big those people.
mm.
So anything having to do with D&D was just like off the table, and I just like somehow never heard of it. I didn't hear about it till I graduated high school. That
Mm.
was probably the first time I had heard or met anyone who played D&D outwardly and like said it to me. And I was
Anybody
like,
who admitted to playing D&D.
exactly. It was very much like it's just a thing I do. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay, cool.
Just
I
throw
was,
some dice, NBD. Like,
yeah. They were like, don't worry about it. I was like, I won't for 3 years. So just moved right on past that.
wait, did
Junior
you
year of
just graduate?
college.
Did you just,
Yes.
how old are
2020.
you?
I'm 23. It's disgusting. Everyone always everyone makes the same face. I've met people that are like,
You
this card is
infant.
older than you.
You infant. Like, it's just like when I talked to Chase and I was like, this
Mm,
basic land is older than you are. I
yep.
got deck boxes that are older than you.
It's intimidating. Oh my gosh.
Dude, I earned all the white in my beard. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah. I can't remember who I was just talking to about this, but it might have been actually just on a stream, so maybe I was just
Mm.
talking to myself about this, but I was like the thing that I like most about Magic is like that I can get rid of my fears. If you're so I'm a musician, and one of the biggest things is that time equals experience.
Mhm.
And it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. If you play piano for 20 years and like consistently play and practice and are challenging yourself, you're going to be better than a person who just started a year ago.
Yes.
And even if they're a prodigy, they might not understand the idea of like finding a manager and being able to manage their own gigs and what their money and their pay
Yeah,
should look
yeah,
like.
yeah.
There are just some things that come with experience. The thing that I like about Magic is that I have such a sponge brain. Like I'm here to learn, 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 and soak up
Mhm.
stuff. And I don't feel like there's a boundary between like someone who's been playing for 10 years or like someone who owns cards that are older than me and like me
Mm.
sitting down at a table.
Yeah.
I have not felt any like I can tell when I'm kind of short on
Mhm.
something when I don't understand knowledge and I will ask them for that. But
Mhm.
for the most part, the game is designed so well that I don't have to feel a disadvantage
Mhm.
like at all.
Like,
And it's great.
that's the thing I love about Magic is that, like, somebody can pick up the game this year and just be able to get to the Pro Tour, be able to get to the World Championships. I remember
Mhm.
there are, like, folks at, who work at Wizards who are younger than the game itself, and I'm like, "That's insane to me." But
Mhm.
it's also, like, a testament to the fact like, every time I talk to someone who's, like, you know, because on Twitter I run into people who play Commander all the time, and I run
Mhm.
into a lot of hardcores. And sometimes I see people who are like deeply intelligent, writing long philosophical essays and like hardcore into Commander. And I'm like, when did you pick it up? And they're like, oh, 3 months ago. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Like,
It's wild. It doesn't make any sense.
no, it
And
doesn't. But and especially Commander, like so, like for instance, if you go and you've played a pre-release and it's one set, 40 cards, that's pretty that's like not hard to get. It's like it's complicated, the game is hard, but it's not like okay, you can figure it out. By the end of the evening, you know
Mhm.
how to play Magic. you pick up a commander deck, and that's like 100 cards that are cards from God knows when and where, all over the place. There's keywords, there's triggers, there's all this nonsense that. And you said you picked up the goddamn Catherall deck, which is like Token Town, right? Like,
Yes.
and it's just like super, and it's one of the weirdest commanders I've ever seen. For those of you on the audio feed, Catherall, of course, being the two white blue, two white black green 3/3 that says. When it enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on any creature you control if a creature card in your graveyard is flying, or first strike or double strike, death touch, hexproof, blah, 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 all the way down. Then put a 1/1 counter on Catherall for each counter you put on a creature this way. This card is awesome. It is crazy nutso toolbox deck. It's also hella weird. And
Yes.
where I would say, hey, new person, pick up this deck. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Like, fully, it was.
It's like saying, you know what? I learned how to swim in the bathtub, so now I'm going to go to the ocean and like jump into a whirlpool and hold my nose.
Oh yeah, I think so. Like something I do know, I think I got Ikoria after it had been released, so I need to actually pinpoint when that was because the two precon. I actually remember getting two precons. Now that I think about it, around the same time, which was I got Catherall, and then I think a little bit after that was when I got Strixhaven. So
Strixhaven was like a year after Ikoria.
Yeah. So I think that the game store that I went to, they just had a bunch of precons and that one was super cheap. And so I was like,
Sure.
yes, I will do that. And then I watched Game Nights and they did Josh Lee Kwai played Essex and I was like, interesting. I see what's supposed to happen here. I'm supposed to pick up the second most confusing commander. And so I bought Essex and I sat down for a game, like my first commander game. I made like 64 Hornet Queens and did like was like everyone else what's up? I'm your problem now. Like that was
no kidding. No kidding. Hornet Queen, by the way, chef's kiss of a card, one of my favorite cards of all time. Also, are you for real? Essex? Essex is like okay, so I mean, to be fair, one of my other good friends who's like never played Magic before Strixhaven, but he's been like a game designer and game developer for a long time, so he could figure it out. He also was like, I want to play Quandrix. I'm going to do all of this shenanigan nonsense. And I'm like, bro, this is maybe not where I would recommend starting. And yet he's like now on his like fifth EDH deck. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Whatever gets you going, let's go.
I think that there's just like so much versatility to it because when I started off, the deck that my friend recommended to me was just mono green stomp, like stompy stuff. And I got very used to just like each game that we sat down, the 1 to 3 games we got in one night, I got very used to like putting counters on creatures and then making them really big and doing whatever I can. Like even if I lost, I would do whatever it took to get them big enough that they looked a little scary and that people had to take care of them. And when I went to the Eldraine pre-release, I discovered like blue and black and I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. And then I left the game and when I came back, like Catherall was perfect because I liked the counters idea. And then I really only got Catherall for the counters and then realized that it had to do with like hexproof and all of these other things.
Yeah, you have to learn all these vocabulary
suddenly. Yeah. So I got that. And then Essex has just been like my pet ever since. Like fully,
I love it.
I love it. And like there's so many things in it that make my heart happy that it's really hard to like, it's not even that it's full blue because I only run like 2 counter spells in it.
Sure.
Everything else is just like make 6 this and make 4 squirrels and like
Rite of Replication, the doubling season, parallel lives, and just put the cardboard on the table. Let's go.
Exactly. Like I want to make as many actions as possible and I want them to be annoying. Like it's so great.
Like oh my god.
It's amazing.
So I need to know why would you okay, it's like I get it. Like picking up going to pre-release playing it and being like, all right, I'm good, I did it, and moving on. I get that. What made you come back and why would you pick up an EDH deck? because like EDH is not like, it's not standard, right? It's not the
Mm-hmm.
normal way. I mean, it is now, I guess, the normal way to play. But I'm just curious because I'm on the Commander Advisory Group. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things I care the most about is new players coming to the game, and I want to know. And one of the things we've learned is that Commander is the most common way for people to be taught how to play Magic. And beyond just being the most common way for people to play Magic, it's one of them. Like, people, they stopped making intro decks. They used to make like introductory decks for sets with like a bad planeswalker and some other crap, and they were like, people are actually just learning through their friends' EDH decks. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, and I mean, I've taught a few people with EDH too, but why would you, like, if you've taken 2 years, 3 years off the game, whatever, and you come back and you're like, why do I want the EDH? Why did you come back in the first place?
I mean, at first I was going to start playing Arena again, which is very
Mm-hmm.
funny because they didn't have it on MacBook for a little bit. And then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, COVID's hitting. How else am I going to play?
Right.
And then stumbled across game nights, and game nights kind of brought me back to, like, I thought that Commander was standard for a little bit. I'm like not even
I mean,
joking.
you're
I was like,
probably
this
not
is
even
it.
wrong these days. I mean, it's
Yeah, I was
basically
like,
standard.
this is how people play Magic. So I went out and I bought a deck, and I
Did you have
literally
people to
just
play
like,
with?
I did have people to play with. The game store that I was like bought the deck at, I
Mm.
never went back to this game store again. Um, but it was very fun because I bought the decks, and then some guys were like, "Oh, have you played Magic before?" They asked me, and I was like, "No, I haven't. Like, I played a long time ago, but I don't really know. Like,
Long time
I
ago, being last year.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't really remember all the rules, and they were like, yeah, okay, yeah. Do you want to get in a game? And I was like, absolutely. First game, like I said, I made like 64 Hornet Queens, and then chaos ensued. But all of them, like I was just sitting there listening to all of them talk about their cards, and like hearing one person be like, "Oh, Coma, like that is an overpowered card," like stuff like that, and I
Well,
was like,
yeah.
"What?" I'm like, what? A coma? Like an actual? Like I was confused, and they're just throwing words out there, and that stuff
Sure.
sounded like gibberish. And I am the kind of person where my personality is, if I'm in on something, I'm all in. So the second I knew there was knowledge to be gained in this
Oh
game,
no. Oh
like
no.
you can sit down and play Uno and have no knowledge about Uno. It like nothing. You don't need to know anything about like, oh,
There's no
what is
lore in
yellow?
Uno.
Yeah, like the yellow faction and the blue faction and the reverse faction. Like none of it. I sat down at this magic table and they started saying things and listing words, and
And
like
you're mad that you didn't know what these words are?
I was like, excuse me? I can learn more about this game than just numbers and mana cost and all different. Like, I immediately was pulled in, and I just realized that the world of Magic was way bigger than what I thought. And having a creature be at the forefront, I think the thing that pulled me in the most was someone saying, "You always have access to this card.
Mm.
You always have access to this. You can pull this out." And then to have people do like something that a lot of like nerds like to do is be like, "Hey, new person, you're learning this game. Let me show you how it's done," and they'll just
Oh
beat you
god.
down. And for most people, that's a pretty terrible experience. But like
I
to
was
have
that guy
people
a long
say,
time ago, and then I was like, this is not a good way to get somebody to want to play you again. This is in
"Yeah,
fact a
it's
bad way to get somebody to play with you again.
really not good." But for me, I was like, "Oh, you built a deck that does this weird thing. I want to see it." And to know that that was a possibility, and that people were just finding random cards and throwing it in there and being like, "Yes, it
Yes.
does what I want it to do." I was like, "Oh, I'm in." And it's just been all in ever since.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about Commander that I love so much is that it literally is exactly, "Oh, show me the nonsense that your deck is doing,"
Hmm.
because there is some weird crap in there. There's cards that were made 20 years apart that have no business even seeing each other, let alone playing next to each other, that are gonna do some obscene garbage. Like, just like,
Yes.
they're gonna do some, like, straight up, "You need to go to jail for this" level crap, and and it's so good, and
It
I
is so
love, like,
good.
every time. I mean, like, even something as simple as like for me and like Olivia Gobert Hicks, we
Hmm.
both got Brea decks, and they're both hardcore, fully tricked out, maxed out combo stuff. We share like 3 cards in common
Hmm.
out of the 100. Like,
Yeah.
it is insane how much variety you can get and still have just busto decks going on. And it's just so much fun because you sit down with somebody and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna play, whatever, I don't know, Slimefoot or something," and you're like, "Okay, I
Mhm.
think I know what Slimefoot does," and they're like, "Ah, but this is Slimefoot that you've never seen before," and I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" It's like, and then they
They're
pull out something, and you're like, "Why is that? You're playing black. How are you countering my spells? I don't understand." And
Yep.
like, what is going on? It is the best. It is the There's an episode of Game Nights. I don't know if you've seen, but it's maybe the most legendary episode ever,
Mhm.
where Josh Lee Kwai and Rachel Agnes they were basically playing like guild based decks, and they were
I literally am in the middle of watching. I'm rewatching the episode. I'm like halfway through the episode on YouTube right now. That is so funny.
yeah, because there's a scene in there where they get into a counterspell battle,
Yes,
and
in Boros.
you're like, neither of them is playing blue, and there are 5 counters on the stack. What the hell is going on? How did they find every counter in the game, and how are they in their hand right now? What is happening?
Literally, because Josh, he's like, oh, she's got some tricks, but I also have a trick. And then it'll cut back to her. And she's like, yeah, well, I came prepared. And then it cuts back to him, and he's like, I also came prepared. And I'm like, where is Blue at? Where are Blue players at?
What
What's
is
going on?
and that's like one of the clips I like to show people to be like, yo, this is, if you think Commander is one thing, this is how it can be totally different.
Yes.
It's like, Rachel is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life because I work with her on CAG, but also
Mhm.
she's like a hardcore vintage specialist and like
Mm.
insanely spiky Magic player. Like, she's hella good at the game, but she plays this ditz on TV, and you're like, oh, you're just like, she's gonna lure them in and just like shank them, and
Yes.
you're just gonna be like, "What happened?" And she's like, "Yeah, well, I countered you with 4 counter spells in black. Go to hell." And you're like, "I don't understand. Please stop hurting me."
So good. It's so good.
So
I
good.
think like I've been kind of threatening that I'm going to get into CDH or CEDH, which will be everyone's another problem that everyone will have to deal with. But
Ah,
I've been threatening to get into that. And like the one thing I've been talking to a few people about the format and what they like about it. And I think something that is very limiting to me with it, I love it and I love watching people play it.
mhm.
And the brain juice that goes
Oh,
into
yeah.
doing it is just, it's immense. And I literally just watch people play and I'm like, I love you. I'm in awe of you. I want to learn from you. I could ask you 10 million questions. But the problem that I have is that the decks are not like, there is a strong meta. Like, that is something that is very hard for me. I still
Mm,
haven't figured out like what kind of, you know, player I am. I haven't
mhm.
figured out if do I like counterspelling? Do I
Sure.
like playing big creatures? Do I like going in for damage? Like, I tried to get into modern, and the only modern deck I have is like a mill rogues thing because I could not. I like the trickiness of mill,
Mhm.
but I could not attack. Like, it just didn't make sense for me to just be like, I'm going to just sit here and mill you, and that's what this game is
That's
going to be
just
about.
like, that is fun for some people to have a control game to be like, "Okay, I'm going to stop the things you're doing and then let my game plan happen." That's a valid play style. It's fun. I mean, I
Hmm.
do it in limited all the time, but like,
Absolutely.
my modern deck is elves. I want
Yeah.
to play a whole ton of elves. I want to make a big combo where they all go explosively off, and then I want to turn a bunch of dudes sideways and come in at you. Like,
Hmm.
none of this namby I don't want spells. I don't want to worry about stacks. I just want to play a good, clean, punch you in the face till you die magic, and like,
Yeah. And like,
eh,
see, that's a very valid form of. I still haven't figured out if that's like specifically what I want to like.
yeah, no, yeah, there's so much to do.
There's
The
so much.
And you're right about TDH being like a very meta-dependent format because it's like a
Hmm.
lot of people who have built a very large series of optimized decks to play against each other and like to play against these other very tuned decks. And it's the same way, like, you're not going to bring an F1 race car to the grocery store. Bringing
Yeah.
like a CDH deck to like, a normal table, they're going to just fold because they're teching for things that don't exist in a
Yes.
normal commander game. Whereas over there, they're like, okay, I'm ready to stifle your fetch land. I'm ready to play this cursed totem to stop your activated abilities from happening. All of these things that are like, I'm going to stop you from playing 3 spells a turn, whatever.
Hmm.
Like, you've got one 4-card combo in there and 38 ways to tutor for it. You know, like
Yep.
they've got a plan, they've got to win, but you're just gotta like basically like I don't like to be reductive about TDH because I think I've played it a bunch and I get it. I appreciate why people play it and I appreciate what it's there. But when you look at just like the raw stats of building a CEDH deck, it's like you've got your combo, you got the ways to get your combo, and then you got the ways to stop people from messing with your combo. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm just building my like commander deck, my lower tier deck, I can just say, here's a bunch of creatures I like. Or here's some spells that I played when I was a kid that I just want to pull back and be like, look, spell blast or whatever. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
and that's it's not good or bad. It's just this is what I want versus this is what you want.
Yeah.
And like I think it's taken me a long time to get to that part. Let me tell you.
Yeah. It's tough because I want to learn, and I
Mm,
think that that's like the one thing about me is that I am willing to try formats. I'm willing to um play commanders that I don't like wouldn't normally like
sure.
because it's all about getting to that answer of what do I like out of
Yes.
Magic. Like you brought up Olivia's Brea deck. Uh she played that against me and I lost my mind. I just lost my mind. I was like, I don't care about artifacts. I've never cared about artifacts in my life. Who is this? And I saw, like, I was like, please let me read your like, let me read your commander. She was like, yeah, sure. And I just picked it up and I was like, why am I in love right now? Like,
Oh,
can
dude.
I just go through your deck? And she's just like sitting there while I thumb through it. I'm like, oh my God, what does this do? And she's like, yeah, that's gas. And then just like goes back to
Mm-hmm,
talking. And I'm like,
mm-hmm.
what is this do? And it was an eye opening experience because I've been wanting to play an artifact deck because I hate artifacts so much. I can't
Oh, what?
do,
I love
it's
artifact decks. Oh my
it's
god.
hard. Okay, what I will say, I don't like Voltron decks. I don't like where I
What?
have to understand
Oh,
specifically
but
the order to put things in order to like it's just
oh,
not my brain
my
space.
friend, my friend, I need to show you the light.
I know. Oh,
I need to send you my like yeah,
please.
dude, I need to send you my Voltron or my Tuvasa Auras deck. It's all about suiting up your creatures and just slamming you in for a billion. And it is one of my most favorite decks. It is
Yeah.
super delightful. And it
And
just yeah, it's like I mean artifacts and enchantments are like two of my favorite things.
that's like my perfect thing. Like that is my favorite thing in the world. Like I could just do, mono green, I could do mono blue, I could find the archetypes that like exemplify the standards of spell slinging or whatever or
Yeah.
rogues or whatever. But I love when if there is something that I don't particularly like, something I've been practicing is going and finding someone who plays something I do like, or even if they play a spell that I really like. Like I haven't gotten any of the swords yet, and I'm waiting for the right deck to go out and get the swords and put the swords in so that
Mm.
I understand the hype about both the
God, I love the
swords and
swords.
like using them. Like I haven't found them yet. And like Brea was the perfect example of that. Of like
Mm.
I realized I was like, I don't like artifacts. I don't like it, not thopters and stuff, just like other stuff, keeping track of how many are on the
Just like
board.
all the things that just sit there and do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're not playing a deck that like artifacts matter, they just kind of are pieces of cardboard that take up space on the board unless they tap for mana. Then I'm like, okay, cool, maybe it's a mana rock. Great,
You're
good
stabbing me in
job.
the stomach, man.
I know, but that's perfect because now I get the chance to like go in and hear about like
So
this.
here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and look up this dude Felden.
Oh, I'm
Felden,
so
a
ready.
mono red commander who is one of my favorite cards of all time. Felden basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Well, I guess I will.
Do it.
Felden. So Felden basically says, for 2 and a red tap, create a token that's a copy of target creature in your graveyard, except it's an artifact in addition to other types. It gains haste, and then you sack it and send it back to the yard. Right? It's because Felden's love story. His wife died. He's like a master mage. He's trying to bring her back to life. And all he can do is bring back these automatons, and they keep just not being his wife. And it's the
It's so
saddest story.
sad.
I
It's so
love it though. It's one
sad.
of my favorite characters ever. And the thing is though, when you realize his wife is actually just oh god, Wormcoil Engine. His beloved wife, Wormcoil Engine, because she is the 6/6 Death Touch lifelinker for 6. And when she dies, she splits into a 3/3 Death Touch and a 3/3 lifelink. And Felden's like, no, my darling worm coil, please come back to me. And he brings her back to life with 6/6 haste, death, touch, lifelink. And then at the end, she has to go back to Hades, but leaves 2 children behind. And then you end up with a grip of 3/3 death touch lifelinkers all over the place and just keep looping. And it's just it is the silliest meta story ever. But that deck is so much fun. Oh my god, is that deck
Yeah,
fun?
yeah. See, that would be fun for me to play. That would be really fun for me to play, and I would love to like build something like that. I
It's so
think
dumb. I love it though. It's like it's just one of those things where you're like, this is the dumbest thing in the world, and I feel really stupid for doing this, but holy crap, I'm having a great time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that there are so many. Oh my gosh, I feel like one of my favorite things is seeing that moment in other people because
Yeah.
that's what inspires me to make a deck.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people, they'll scroll through EDH Rec and they'll find a commander that they're like, oh, this is a really, really strong, powerful commander, and I'm going to build a deck around this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to win. And I could be playing my Essex deck. I could be playing any of the other decks that I have.
Mm-hmm. How many do you
But
have?
oh my gosh, let me see. I've got one of those like dinky little Menards carriers now, so that tells you. Let me see.
Can I recommend a quiver? Those things are baller, and I highly suggest them. They also decided to
Oh,
make
it's so
me
bad.
their ambassador now, which is pretty rad.
I
But
did see that. Congratulations about
it's
that.
super cool. I love
Yeah,
quiver. Um,
I have 11 decks. And each of them it's one of them I made myself. All the rest of them are decks that I was Essex and Cathrall are precons,
Sure.
but just about every other deck is a deck that I saw someone else play or I
Mm.
saw someone play a card from and I was like, whoa. And then I looked up the commander and I was like, whoa, I gotta figure out this. Like Atla was one that I started playing.
Atla Palani is a good card.
Atla Palani's a good card. I had seen the prof play Kadena on game nights, and that was morphs. And for some reason in my brain, I thought morphs and eggs were the same exact thing.
Oh no.
So I like went out and I bought the Atla precon thinking, and it wasn't Atla, but like
Yeah,
I
I
can't
know.
remember. Yeah, I got Atla, and then I was like, oh, but I love this so much. And then I saw someone play it, and they were like throwing out Eldrazi,
Oh, it
and then I
gets
saw
dumb. It gets
yeah,
dumb.
someone else was doing dinosaurs. I was like, ooh, Jurassic Park themed. And so then I just threw a bunch of dinosaurs
Yeah.
in there and one Eldrazi. But like all Shorakai was one that I was like, I'm building this not because and then I didn't build it. I just went out and bought the precon because I didn't understand vehicles. And so I was like, I'm gonna learn vehicles and I'm gonna learn how to.
That's, I think, the best thing about these precons is that they're now so accessible and have made it so easy for people to be able to just dip their toe into weirder sides of EDH that you wouldn't otherwise normally get to.
Oh yeah.
It's so 11 decks. I love it. I love it. I love to hear it. Not gonna lie, this fills me with joy. But like, I think that is such a wise thing to do, is to watch other people play cool decks that you wouldn't do, and then sit there, thumb through that deck, copy that list, try it out for yourself, and be like, "Oh, this is sick.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome." Like, that's what happened with me in this Gave CDH deck I played. I'm like, "Oh, I used to hate CDH, but I like making tons of tokens and attacking for 1,000,000,000. That turned out to be exactly what I want to do in my life."
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I saw Josh Lee Kwai play the Hapatra deck on his on
Oh
game nights, and then I went and I basically built it and turned it into my own. And it is one of the most joyful things I've ever done. And I think there's just so many, like, that's such a good way to learn, because there's thousands and thousands of commanders, and they
yes.
all do stupid different things. And that thing is somebody's favorite thing in the world. And that person is going to make the most baller deck you've ever seen. And then you're going to be like, well, damn, I want to do that now. That's going to be sick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been like an exercise that I've been doing, which is I will go through and find random commanders
Mm.
and try to figure out what would my way of playing them be.
Yeah.
And just practicing deck building by picking out a few cards, not doing the full 100 because that's a lot of work.
Well,
But
because
like,
like 40 of them are lands. Who cares?
yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, here are some cards I would pick if I could do this. And like something that I've been looking at, and I want to build a Kalia deck because I have a pod of like D&D people that love Kalia. All of them have a Kalia deck, and I'm like, because that's what they played was just like Kalia the
Kalia's
Vast, and I'm
hella
like,
good. Kalia.
whoa, okay, cool. Let me
dude,
let me try.
Kalia was one of those first like she was in the first batch of precons that came out in 2011.
Mm,
And that's like right when I started playing Magic in 1993, and then
hmm
I stopped in like 1997 or something, and then picked up
hmm
again in like 2010, no 2000, whatever it is, somewhere mid 2000s. But like Commander, I got those precons, and the Kalia deck is just angels and demons and dragons. What else do you want in the world? That's everything.
Amazing. They were like, these people, I started a group chat with them and I was like, are we going to play soon? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, if you want to, like upload your decks here, let's check out your mana curve. Like I'm going around it like the most logical beginner magic way, which is let's look at your mana curve and make sure that you're going to play everything on that thing. And they're like, girl, it's got angels, demons, and dragons. I don't need a mana curve. Like I will be fine. And I'm like, watch me blow you away because I like my thing has been like, okay, I want to build an angels, demons, dragons, or just angels and demons, but I want it to be Blink themed rather than like, yeah, I go get them, but also just Blink themed and just really, really harping on the end of the battlefield effects. But I'm holding off because I want to do New Capenna demons. I want New Capenna demons in it. But like that's been something that I look at is I will just find a commander if someone recommends. I just tweeted actually recently, saying like, oh, I got new printer ink. I'm already out of printer ink again, but I was like, got new printer ink. What should I print up to proxy and try out? And people dropped a bunch of commanders, and I literally made a list and have gone through the list and been like, okay, this is how I'm gonna build old stick fingers, or this is like I'm gonna do this to this commander, or this is Kess, and Kess is
Oh
normally
god,
built this way.
Kess is a lot.
Kess is a lot. Kess is a lot. But yeah,
But I
that's
mean
kind of
because like my approach is generally like I want to play this card.
mm-hmm,
What commander, what deck can I do to build this card? Like the deck that I'm known for is my Tajik Soldiers deck. It's like basically it's meant to make red white soldier tokens because my favorite card when I was a kid was this card called Kaldoran Outpost, which is a land and it makes soldier tokens. And you can tap it to make soldier basically. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It makes 1/1s. That's gonna be awesome in EDH, right?
yeah.
And no, it turns out that sucks, but it doesn't matter because then, like at Return to Ravnica pre-release, I got a card called Assemble the Legion, which is an
Mm.
enchantment that's like at the beginning of your turn, put out a 1/1, then put another counter on it, then put out a soldier equal to the amount of counters on it, right? So like every turn, it's like 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, whatever. It's just like a whole army coming very, very slowly. Nothing like an army of 1/1s coming out one at a time every turn in EDH to
Oh
be like,
yeah.
this is a powerhouse card. But I was like, you
Slow
know what?
burn.
I want to play these two cards. What can I do? And they had like this red white soldier named Tajik who showed up. And I was like, all right, that's going to be my guy. And I'm going to build a soldier tokens deck. It is my worst deck. It is also my favorite deck. And like, it doesn't win until like I got Embercleave and like some
Mm.
other cards that it turned out having very strong cards with your Voltron soldier just wins. But my whole premise, like I built a treasure deck like a few months ago, and I was like, I want to play cards that let me get a ton of treasure tokens. All these things from Kaldheim that make treasures,
hmm
like
Yeah.
Magda. I was like, I want to play Magda, and I want to play Marionette Master and whatever. And so I built that deck. Like I think you can like there's a way to be like, okay, I'm looking at this card and I'm going to build a commander deck around this guy,
hmm
or here's a handful of cards I just always wanted to play. What can I do to put them somewhere?
Yeah. And I think right now I'm still in that like beginner phase where commanders are more accessible to me than
Yes.
like, and I appreciate that a year ago people would say like someone would say coma and I'd be like who, and I'd have to like sneakily I'd nod and be like I understand
Yeah, of
sneakily on
course.
Google
Hey,
like looking it
Scryfall,
up.
how's it going?
Yeah, exactly. And now when people say certain commanders, I'm like way more. I can pull them out of thin air
Right.
sometimes, but I think that there's
Even I
like
can't do it all the time. There's a
oh
lot
yeah,
of
the cards part is where I'm like, that's where I want to get better. And it's actually really funny because the whole thing with deck building, this stint of deck building on my own, has been inspired because I talked to Olivia after uh, she showed me her deck, and I was like, "So, what is your deck building approach? Like, what do you do?" I asked the same question: Do you start with the cards, or do you start with the commander, or like, what do you do? And she was like, "Normally, I just go through a shoebox, like a box." That has a bunch of cards, and I see if there's anything I want to play, and then I
Yep.
throw it together and try to make
Livy is
something.
wild. Like
Yes.
she is. First off, she's one of the most inspiring people I know. She's one of my dearest
Yes.
friends, one of the coolest people you can have on your side in the world, just hands down. She's also completely like the most bizarre like magic player you're ever going to meet, because she's like all of these things that we didn't believe existed all in one. One
Mm-hmm.
is she learned to play by playing two-headed giant commander. What the hell is that?
What?
Like, you know, like what are you telling me? And then she never played normal 60 card magic. She doesn't play limited magic. She doesn't understand how to play more than one copy of a card at a time. Like that
Oh
doesn't
my
register to her.
gosh.
She doesn't play arena except when like, somebody is paying her to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like she's literally, I'm here for commander. I'm here to play 100 card stacks, and I'm going to find a random ass card you've never seen before. And this is going to be the jankiest deck you've ever seen. And I don't
Yep.
care because you're going to watch anyways. And she's like every inspiration you want, right? Like this woman
Yes.
is got it going on.
Just wild. Like she told me, like, literally, I asked, I was like, okay, well, I don't have a lot of cards to start from. And she was like, I don't even go to EDHREC. I don't read other people's decks. I
Nope.
don't do that. I start on Scryfall and I look specifically for what I want to do. And if I get my shoebox of cards and then I decide, these are the cards I'm going to put in. And then if I have space for other things, then I go to Scryfall and I either use my brain or I go to Scryfall. And she was like, don't look at other people's decks. It will influence you way too
Mm-hmm.
much. And I was like, oh, because that's all I was doing before. Like my love pet deck outside of Essex was a Serolf deck that
Mm.
I fully was just like, I watched someone play it. It was probably a month into me playing. I watched this dude blow up everyone's lands, and I was like, what just happened?
Bad
And
news is what just
I
happened.
didn't realize that was a thing you could do. And so
It's
he
because
was
you're
like,
not supposed to.
I know. He was like, no, this is a really mean deck. All of these people are used to me playing it, but it's a really, really mean deck. And I was like,
Mm.
I want to play a mean deck. And so I got Serolf and I started trying to put together cards, but I was looking at everyone's deck list and trying to put together something that at that point in time, no one had figured out. It seemed like when I was looking online, people were just like, I don't really know how to make a good list. It's just mean, but it doesn't actually win me the game. And I kind of set out on my own little thing. And then it's been like a year now, and I just kind of started settling with him of like, oh, am I going to take him apart? And then I talked to Olivia and I was like, okay, this is going to be my thing. I'm going to go and I'm going to make this deck by looking up specifically techniques I want to use and get more acquainted with cards by
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
using like reading a card and being like, okay, this is how they say put a +1/+1 counter on something, or when something enters the battlefield, like using those specific words. And it has
Yes.
just been like really revolutionary to
That is such
start
a good
doing
level
that.
up moment too. It's just like,
Yeah.
because that's how you learn to like, when you start to learn how to sculpt your searches to be more like targeted to what you want to do. That's when you start to find the real juicy heart of the card type level nonsense, where you
Yeah.
find like all of the real like the real meat that's deep, deep, deep. Like 17 years ago, this card came out in Mercadian Masks, but it is exactly what I need right now. And you're like, this card is so sick. How come I've never heard of it before? But it does exactly what you want. And you're like, this is why we play the game.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's a card from Stronghold. I don't know if you've ever heard of before. It's called Heartstone. Heartstone is an artifact that costs 3, and it says art activated ability to creatures costs 1 less to activate. So basically, for 3 mana, you can discount the activation on whatever you're doing. And this is one of these like weirdo secret tech cards that you don't realize has so much insane application that you can just go infinite a bunch of different ways. But also, if you've got these stupid new reconfigure guys from
Mm.
Kamigawa, suddenly they're cheaper to activate and cheaper to equip. And it's like all of this weird stuff that you find because you learned the trigger word. Oh, what happens if I search activated ability? And then
Mm-hmm.
all this weird stuff shows up, and it's sweet. And it's like, look at what we can do. It's so cool.
It's amazing, and it's like a strong facet of why I love, like, what drew me to Commander, why I still love Commander, why I'm like
Mm,
all in on it right now is the creative. Like, I have fun. Some people have fun like sitting around and like watching TV or hanging out with
mm,
their friends, and I have fun like taking a blanket, roll up in the blanket, get my iPad out. I'm gonna drop an image. Like I will go and Procreate and like literally just start a drawing of like, here's the card, here's the commander. I'm gonna go on Scryfall and write down every single card I think could work in this deck. And like that's like a silly little night in for me. Like and that's creativity in its own right. It's just the same as like painting or drawing.
I love it, dude. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I'm like,
I
this
mean,
is the way.
there's something for me just soothing about like back before pandemic when you'd go into the store and just dig through a box of random cards at the back of your
Yeah.
LGS. And now I just like do my Scryfall randoms every day for that same kind of itch. It's like, what is this card? I've never heard of it. I've been playing for a million years. This thing is suddenly the key card to what I want to be doing now. Every day I get messages from people who are like, yo, that Scryfall random you posted, like I went out and bought a copy and then I built 3 decks around it. I'm like, yes, that is all we want in the world. I want you to find random garbage and be like, this is the deck that I'm going to be building. And it's like,
Yeah.
why not, dude? Hammer it. Let's go.
Oh yeah.
It's so dumb though. Sometimes there's just so many fun, weird things. And Commander is just so full of fun, weird things. That's why I love it. Like I love the storytelling. I love also just when we play and there's 4 other people, like 3-4 other people at the table, and I put cards out and I don't realize that they impact your crap.
Yeah.
And suddenly there's weird cascading effects that we did not see coming. And now there's chaos. And
that
you're
is
like,
my favorite. It's
like,
amazing.
I love it when you read a card and you're like, what do you mean it goes off every upkeep? Or
yes.
What do you mean it impacts them too? Oh God, what did I do?
Oh my gosh. I love it. I literally love it so much. I have been trying to find those cards that just like surprise me because it's a little treat for me when I have a 100 card deck that is singleton, obviously, because our format is beautiful like that. And I play a deck 4 times, and the 5th time I see a card that I'm like, oh, what does this do again? And I get to have that little like, a little treat for later. Like I just love putting those little tiny things in my deck to just like, I don't know, it just brings me joy. Like I can build the deck, but to like encounter these cards that in some situations it's like, it's not really helping me. But in some situations I'm like, oh, did I just disrupt your board? With a little 10-cent card. Like I think the card that has been most recent for me has been, oh my gosh, Combine Chrysalis. It is like a very, very cheap card, but literally the first line, it's 1 sentence. Creature tokens you control have flying.
Right.
And I think, so I was playing in a game and someone was playing Xyrus and they had like 70-something snakes. They had, I did this cute little thing that I like to do where I just sit there quiet. I'm not going to let you know if I'm in danger, if I'm whatever. I'm just like, yeah, go ahead, swing. They had mercifully taken out the 2 other players with their snakes, and I was the last one standing. They're like, yeah, the rest of these are going to go at you. I Druid's Deliverance so that I got rid of all combat damage, populate, and then next turn, Combine Chrysalis, all of my crappy little Essex token things fly. And I'm like, well, you sent everything at me, so there you go. It's all
GG's, baby.
And everyone's like, where did this card come from? What is this card? And I'm like,
so
I don't know.
Here's the thing that I'm going to do that push my glasses up on my nose thing. It's
Please.
Combine Chrysalis. Because it's a Simic Combine.
Oh, that makes sense. Because of the guilds. Is it a Ravnica? Ooh.
It is a Ravnica. I mean, it's from Modern Horizons. It's from Modern Horizons, but it's basically meant to be a Simic card. So it's Combine Chrysalis.
I love that. I'm like learning this is like, that's the stuff I like. That is the stuff like I love playing, but also like things like that. I've been going back through and trying to learn the set symbols and like stories behind each. Oh, there's so many.
Like that's why I mean normally I wouldn't do that because that's like a real jerk thing to do, to be like, excuse me, it's actually blah. But I figured you were the type of person who would enjoy knowing that.
Yes, I do. I really do. I think that's so annoying to some people that like, I don't know. I think that most people would not enjoy the little actually moments, but for me, I'm like, please, I need more food for my brain.
Right? Like somebody needs to tell me if it's gonna be you, then it's gonna be you. But I need to know.
Exactly.
I'm looking actually right now for a card I want to talk to you about because I'm going to guess you've never heard of it and it's rad.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Yeah, so there's this card from Mirage, I think it was. Oh yeah, Tombstone Stairwell. Have you seen this card before?
No, what is it called?
So Tombstone Stairwell, it's from Mirage. It's a 2 and 2 black world enchantment. Now, world enchantment just used to mean that you can only have one world enchantment out in play at a time on either side of the table. It's sort of like super legendary for
Yeah.
so like there's like a for instance there was a world enchantment called Concordant Crossroads. Every creature gets haste. Tombstone Stairwell, cumulative upkeep. So at the beginning of your turn, you put one and a black in there, and then you have to pay that twice and then three times, whatever, on and on. But that's because what this thing does is one of the most nasty things you've ever seen in your life. At the beginning of each upkeep, if Tombstone Stairwell is on the battlefield, each player creates a 2/2 black zombie token with haste for each creature card in their graveyard. And then at the beginning of the end step, at each end step or whenever this thing leaves, destroy all the tokens that's created. So basically, every turn, everybody gets a horde of zombies equal to however much is in their graveyard, and then every turn they die. So if you have this with, say, Sir Conrad, all the creatures are going in the graveyard, people are getting plinked, and you're like, oh snap, oh snap, that just did a massacre to the table. Or like, you know,
My heart. Oh,
I mean, you don't even need to attack with these guys. Just having them show up and do all sorts of dumb stuff by
they
like,
pull
oh
up to
look,
the party and they leave the
I
place in
just have a
shambles.
million ETB triggers that just show up from 30 guys who just showed up on the table. GG, and
Oh
it's
my
gross.
gosh.
It is one of my favorite little tricks from back in the day because this card is just dumb. This card
Oh
is
my
so
god.
stupid and in such a good way.
I feel
Oh,
like there are so many stupid ways to use that.
oh my god, you have no idea. It is obscene. It is obscene the kind of things you can do in any kind of deck you want. This is
Oh
like one of those
god.
cards that's just like, oh, that's real fun. That's real fun in a real weird way, and it makes me happy.
Oh